think it is.
Done.
Part 3.
Part 3.
Lunch at Freeman Grill.
There's a dump truck behind us.
Oh, not too close.
Oh, you're fine.
Double cheeseburgers, fries, drinks, food made from real food.
Interesting experience.
And the gentleman that waited on us said it was good food because he prayed over it. And the customers.
As you do. It's
now-
part of the world.
Part of that ritual.
Yeah, it is. It's kind of living the life that way, yeah.
And it was not expensive.
No, is that the church?
That is the church.
It is the church.
Yeah.
Archetypal.
Yeah, hanging out laundry.
Yeah.
Bolton United Methodist Church. I have to put that on the list of things to do in Holden Beach. When people go to the cottage, I send them a long list of what to do. Back on the Green Swamp Road. Here, I'll set it to.
Chill mode.
This was the first road I ever tried to pass someone after getting the car, the Tesla. And I learned very quickly it's not 0 to 60 that's terrifying. It's 40 to 100. Because they weren't going fast enough. And I was sort of the regular distance behind a car that you would endeavor to pass.
Yep.
And I put on the blinker and mashed it and approached the other car so quickly, I swerved to change lanes to go around it, but almost didn't swerve back to go straight. And because it was all happening so fast.
Right.
And then I realized I need to learn to drive slow.
Yep.
It's not where you mash it and it makes a sound letting you know that it's going to start to speed up in a moment. It speeds up as you're passing, or as you're mashing, it's already speeding up.
Yeah. Yeah. Different driving
Very
dynamics. No feedback.
Nope.
No
it's just
audio feedback.
Everything
the
goes
same
blurry.
as a
It goes.
petrol car.
Yeah, no, that's right. No audio feedback.
You go through, chop it down the gear, put the boot in, then it all. There's a ritual
I'm
about
not downshifting. I'm not pushing in the
it.
clutch.
It just goes
And
different.
it was terrifying. So I got over past that car and then didn't pass anyone for a long time. Unless I could feather it and move up, but not speed past.
Right.
And then change lanes
Yep.
and then go fast.
Right.
Because the normal thing is you speed up, you go over, you go past. But no, this was just one thing at a time. Let's just parallel first, then move over, then go past fast.
Yep.
Yeah.
No, different dynamic, different feeling. I guess that's what's interesting about it, Things change. Often for the better, but not always.
Not always. Yeah. And then
But it's fine.
maybe it's just easy to romanticize the past in terms of what you miss about the old thing
Yeah.
that got replaced by the new thing. Because I kind of miss the inefficiency of manual drawing because things were talked about more frequently. You didn't do a lot of work and then have to undo it and then have to redo it. It was this additive process. So where'd you get? What'd you finish today? Here's, what's the plan? And there was that kind of constant conversation, and not just from the owner, but from the surveyor, from another technical person, from the land. They can just walk by and look at what you're doing.
Right.
And it seems that holistic view of what you're working on is not in the computer.
No.
When you're looking at it on the screen, you don't get that holistic sense. And one of the nice things with Revit is that you could start a project and immediately create elevation sections, schedules, plans. And we didn't do that. We just sort of worked on the plan until we got to a certain point, and then we started with the elevations or with the sections. It was all very, the 3D came last because you had everything else to put it together.
Well, it's quite hard to build 3D. Like, you had to set up perspectives and understand how all that worked.
Oh, yeah.
You actually communicated through plan, elevation, particularly sections, because if you did the section that figured out whether you understood how the building worked, particularly if you do a large scale one.
Right.
And but the other thing I think's missed with drawings is it's actually not model. A drawing is actually the language by which you're communicating what you're wanting to do.
So it's still an abstraction.
It's still an abstraction. It's some, it actually is a language. And one of the things we've come across, some of my clients come across, is that we do things like sections through window heads. And when it goes out on site, even though you've got the PDF and the detail, often the installers do not know how to read the drawing because they have not been exposed or trained to the language of detailing in the older sense. So they don't understand because they can't read the language. Whereas when we were being trained on paper, the language was part of what we were actually creating. And we weren't creating so much models, it was that language that we were taught to present, lay out.
Yeah, creating instructions is different.
Creating instructions, communicating, everything was slightly exploded. So you could actually illustrate where the DPC is between the concrete slab and the bottom plate in such a way that people can see what's going. It's almost schematic. But the first problem you have with building a model in a computer like that, you do the section of 1 to 5 or 1 to 2, and the whole lot's crushed. There's no exploded. There's no illustrative aspect of it. Makes it a lot harder to communicate.
Makes it harder to communicate.
Makes it harder to communicate at that level. But at a general arrangement level, where you're running at 1 to 100, 1 to 20, 1 to 50, that's not a problem because it's macro enough for the detail not to matter. So you'll find a lot of, my experience of it, that the locality drawings or the general arrangement drawings are very easily handled by CAD and Revit, stuff like that.
Right.
But when you come to detailing, that's a different kettle of fish. In terms of you're now illustrating rather than, you may be over a model, like you take out a detail view and you put it on top, but you augment it with detail families and stuff to actually show what's going on. In many ways, you may turn off the background at the end of the day because you're trying to communicate how the detail or how that 1 to 1, 1 to 5.
It may be an exaggerated.
Yeah, it has to.
Situation, as you said, where things are kind of slightly pulled apart.
Yeah.
So because it's instructions, it's not necessarily, it's not 1-to-1 based on geometry. You might need to exaggerate certain features.
Well, it's actually a language. You're building a sentence. You're building something about how the detail is used, telling the story. So you're cartooning or you're sketching. You're not actually modeling. So that kind of culture is still there, but I'm not sure we educate users to understand those differences anymore because they don't have to draw that stuff in their training.
Because they don't have to draw it.
Not exposed.
Then the instructions are maybe a little more obscure.
Yeah. I mean,
do you see the instructions going away in terms of how we do it now? These sort of analytic two-dimensional views that create the instructions to assemble? Is there anything that replaces that?
Yeah, it's kind of like interactive 3D views of things where you clip on the particular junction and it shoots into a three-dimensional interactive and then slightly explodes. And then you can isolate pieces of it to look at things out of context. So everything can be transparent, but the bolt you're interested in there is still rendered out correctly so you can see the context of what you're going through. And that's actually a lot more explicit from the point of view of an installer and a user than a two-dimensional abstraction in a detail. If you haven't been educated in how to read that particular language. So I see that definitely becoming more, but it actually takes a lot of effort to build those models.
Yeah, there seems like there's a lot of double handling, at different scales, the zooming in, the zooming in, the zooming in. Well, that's creating more drawings. Would we have done all of that with pencil, or would you have said, no, we don't need 3 drawings to zoom in, let's just do it over 2?
That's right, and you abstract it. But the other point of those older drawings that you also had craftsmen on the job, the builder, who could interpret the symbology in the detail and build it. And that's gone.
There was some of it that was left. There's a large private residence north of Charlotte, a town called Asheville, and the front of this, it's in the style of a French chateau,
Yeah.
and it's built for Cecil Vanderbilt, I think.
Yeah.
His family was involved in the railroad
Yeah.
business, and so the front of it was very carefully curated. All of the details, all the backside. I mean, they brought craftsmen from Europe to build this, and they stayed to build other things in Asheville. But on the backside, there are carved motifs that were not specified by the architect, and the craftsmen were given, or the stonemasons were given freedom to kind of inject their own sensibilities. So at the tops of these lintels, you would see an exaggerated hunter with a gun on one side, and on the other side is a carving of a hare in stone, and it's trying to run away.
Right.
And so that's the backside of the building that was not specified, not detailed.
Right.
But they knew there was a window, and they knew the size of it, where it was supposed, what it was and where it was supposed to go. But the detail was resolved in the moment by people who knew how.
Exactly. And maybe we're going back to that a bit more. I mean, architects talk about what is required and not necessarily how it's to be done.
Right.
The how is the domain of the guy that's going to build it. So that process, that's
I mean, all of these shop drawings and
you get the
manufacturer's details,
but architects don't get involved with that so much. You get the specialist shops that actually take that stuff, interpret it, and make it so it's buildable from the contractor's point of view.
right.
So so you can't do it all to a degree in terms of the scale maybe that we build now.
Well, Scott talked about this idea of a systems-based design team.
It's really trade based.
Right.
The design team is trade based, and when you put an old spec together, you often go by trades. So why can't they also be like, if somebody's really good at facade details or suspended ceiling stuff, and that's their specialization, they know everything about what's required.
Then let them get good at that.
Let them get good at that. But then architects, as a culture, kind of get bored with that because they're far more generalists in their training and their background. I had a colleague who he was working on the Waterloo station, in London.
Yep.
And he said in his team there was a guy that spent 8 years on that project doing suspended ceilings.
Okay.
That's all he did. I don't think architects generally...
the generalist wants to do that?
No.
Yeah. Look, I don't know. If I had to say, if I could just build stairs, if someone said, hey, we want very cool stairs, we have this project, we need a death trap of stairs, like beautiful, inhabitable sculpture.
Yeah.
But should that be, that if you could really specialize into something? I mean, that's what shops do that fabricate things. They specialize in metalwork, or it could be railings, could be stairs, could be other things.
But you need a scale of work to power that.
I don't know if that systems based, what do you call it, teams based, or
trades.
That trades based methodology works at the design level. Or would it?
I think it's.
Does it really work for large firms?
It does. Well, whatever team you've got, small teams. I mean, effectively, that model drives a bunch of small teams collaborating together. And I'd have to say it's a lot easier to collaborate now, provided everybody is online, than it may have been in the past.
Right.
But
it's not based on geographic location.
No,
you can actually reach out with experts that are
and people that
dispersed.
They're geographically dispersed, but have specialist knowledge which they can bring onto the particular project. Whereas if those specialists are in big firms, they're isolated from a lot of other people.
Right.
So, and the firm has to be quite large to have the scale of throughput to keep a specialist going. Whereas with independent specialists, a small team specialist, if he gets a reputation, they're very busy. I would say maybe that's the direction it'll go eventually. But the other thing always in the back of my mind
where
is...
there's pressure, I agree completely, the pressure of the large firms, because there's a lot of people in the middle that don't bill out.
That's right.
But they're required in order to manage the workflow.
The logistics of it.
the smaller teams don't have people that manage. They just have
Doers.
I mean,
They just
less than
do it.
10 people. There's not an HR department. There's
No.
not.
Not an IT specialist.
No.
Problem with your Enscape, you ring up Phil.
Well, that's a specialist. I'm just a specialist for
Yeah.
Enscape. You don't need an internal
but you don't
Enscape
have an internal
or Revit
guy.
specialist.
No. Well,
You might have somebody who's just hooked onto it. So out of 10 people, someone just knows the answer better than someone else.
Yeah, but if you have a team of 50 people, like our friend Robin Caper, he actually does that role for a bunch of 50 or 100.
And it's required at
in
that
the firm.
scale.
It is required.
You have to have a specialist.
Yeah, and not a lot of architects want to become that either. But yeah. But the other thing is, I think we're getting to the point where we're building models so that we can actually build things in space without people. So eventually you will design things, and part of the consideration is that a robot, however you perceive that, can build that in space and fix it in space.
I like this idea.
And eventually that's what, essentially we're modeling in 3D so that we can automate the process to delivery.
I don't think we're going to send people over to Mars to build things.
No,
if that's what we're going to do, we'll send machines over to Mars to build things.
And if you look at a three-dimensional model, when you build it, it has to be quite explicit, because you're actually, at the end of the day, if you can build it in the computer to actually accomplish certain things, can instruct a machine to do similar things. So, eventually we'll have quite sophisticated modeling in these systems that will actually drive that remotely, and there'll be machines out there that'll actually deliver and build it, weld, rivet, 3D print surfaces, 3D print structures, whatever the technology is appropriate. But they will be instructed from the models that people put together. That's the brave new world. But there will not, the people side of it will reduce just because of the scale required to deliver that type of thing. And that will be tested, in earthbound projects as well. But that's eventually where it will end up, I'm sure.
Yeah, those kinds of hazardous jobs or jobs that require.
Yeah.
Show me how to do this once,
Yeah.
and then I'll go and repeat this thing many times over.
Yeah. And you see it in science fiction. Swarms of repair drones descend on something and fix it all. Not sure how, but
nope.
I'm sure there's models and geometries and structures and everything behind it to drive all that. Quite sophisticated stuff. Very, very sophisticated. And eventually I see that happening, and you build a multi-story building with a series of robots 24/7.
They can work at night. They don't need lights.
They don't need anything much.
I don't know how long it'll be.
Might be 100
If
years
I
away,
see
I'm not sure.
a framer on Holden Beach,
Yeah.
a couple of framers working with a robot, because a robot goes down and he lifts 2x4s off the truck.
Yeah.
They're not going to carry 2x4s. They're going to get the robot to carry the 2x4s.
Yep.
And then they're just going to keep working.
Yeah.
Then I know that at that point the bit will have flipped. I go, okay, robots are a thing. I saw one on Holden Beach today. It was helping a framing crew.
Yeah.
Humanoid robot.
Yep. Then I'll start nailing.
Then it'll start be real.
Yeah.
How do you move materials on site? And I thought, well, if you have robots, you just throw them. Why do I need to walk upstairs? I'll just toss and catch. I wouldn't do it with people because it's dangerous. It's like, what are you doing?
That's what I was going to
Don't
say.
throw 2x4s, idiot. But if it's robots, it's like, yeah, guys, go at it.
Go
Throw
do it.
2x4s. Get those up here as fast as you can.
So the whole safety thing's gone.
It's different.
It's different. And really, the framer just organizes it and runs it, and the building happens.
A robot with a nail gun.
Numbers of robots with nail guns, yes.
All right.
I can see that.
I can see it in big cities.
Yeah.
I'll see when they come to Holden Beach.
But then they scale. If that works really well in a big city, then, like
It'll scale
your
down.
lawnmower guy with all that trailer and all that gear, and, he's got everything he needs to do his job, 40 years ago would have been on a bicycle.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It's very contained.
Very contained, but he's got the appropriate gear at scale to do any of those jobs that he's doing. So you've got to move your frameworks to, it will be available, the robots will be there.
I thought about getting a little robot because they park themselves. They're like a Roomba. and they don't cut grass quickly. They just go slow and kind of
Well, they don't need to,
they
do they?
chew at it. No, they don't go fast. They go a little bit every day.
Yeah.
And then ultimately I thought, I don't need a robot lawnmower. I'll just cut it myself. And I couldn't figure out how to get it to open the gate to get in and out of certain areas. You have to pass through a gate. But it's quiet, right? That's the idea. Is it's quiet. It's a Roomba for your grass.
But if you look at any of these farmers in Nebraska, the tractors are actually guided by GPS systems, and effectively, it won't be long before
They're self-driving.
Nobody is needed in the tractor cab. Just say go and plant this field, 100-acre field, goes out and does it, and
There's
goes 24/7.
somebody in an office or a team in an office pointing, monitoring.
Like Rio Tinto out in Australia, or Western Australia, they have these big mines, and all the machinery, all of it, is remote controlled from Perth. Nobody's involved physically in the machines.
Is somebody involved remotely? They're driving stuff, or they're operating machinery?
They're using AI to drive themselves. Once they put the mapping in,
right.
they dig the stuff out. They put on these big 400-ton buckets, trucks, and move it around.
I've seen videos allegedly of people stocking shelves in Japan with a robot, but it's really somebody in a little office. I don't know if that's real or not. I can't. It's on the internet, but
it's hard to know.
Yeah,
These guys in Perth, 1,500 miles away, they completely control the operation of that mine. There are people on site, but they're there to maintain the trucks, maintain the trains. I mean, the trains that take the wine ore out to the coast are like really long. There's nobody driving them. They just run.
It's remote.
Just completely remote. And, it means that saves in having a lot of people out there. The work is dangerous, but people aren't involved.
I guess if you can hire people from anywhere, like I don't know, maybe some people don't want to live in the middle of the outback in a mining compound.
Unless you start paying them lots and lots of money.
So you just say, no, the job's in Perth.
Yeah. But you still have technical people out there because machines still require fixing.
Right.
But it's not the get in the truck and drive 12-hour days, shifting iron ore from one part of the site to the other. And so the automation is really coming quite strong in farming and that type of industry. And it can only, already in Europe, as I said, they have completely autonomous tractor-driven farming.
What do you reckon will be hard to replace?
What will be hard to replace? I think the calls on when things are done.
The what?
Call on when things are done. The knowledge that the farmer has in that
right.
context of, well, it feels that it's going to be rain today. We need to do something.
Just wait a little bit and let's do it tomorrow.
Judgment. It's judgment. And that's judgment's based on experience. And I think it's very hard for automated systems to understand that, if ever. And it's a very human thing about being able to sniff the air and saying, it's going to rain in 6 hours' time or whatever. You get feelings about the way things happen.
And not just relying on the data.
No. Judgment is a hard thing to, that goes for a lot of things. I mean, you can work on all the mathematics and it can be obvious what the decision is, but sometimes having the right judgment call is the right call.
I worked with someone that used to commiserate that they had a lot of experience, but they weren't trusted.
Right.
Because they were younger.
Yeah.
But had developed a lot of experience.
Yeah.
And I kind of came to my own conclusion that part of it was they weren't old enough to have made enough mistakes.
Yeah.
So with the same amount of experience at 45 is okay, but the same experience at 25 is not okay because you haven't had time to learn from your mistakes. And it's hard to get people to look past that institutional knowledge.
It hasn't fermented properly.
No.
The cheese isn't old enough.
Yeah. But cheese, no, that's right. Yeah. It has to take, there's a time factor.
Yeah. Things mellow over time.
And there are savants.
Like whiskey or things like that. Oh, there are.
But it's not the,
But maybe there's just a natural way of things from that perspective. Because
it's often knowing what not to do, not just what to do.
Yeah, and I think that's why you've got to involve a generational. You need to have a cross generational range in your operation or your practice
Hmm.
in such a way that the older people feel they're contributing, and that they, you could use the word mentoring, but I'm not sure younger people necessarily take that on board.
Right.
I mean, the other thing I hear from time to time is, yeah, they come out of a degree and they know it all and expect to be paid a lot of money and are quite, entitled to the fact that they know everything, but in fact they won't be profitable for 5 years.
Yeah.
I don't know how you balance all that.
If they knew as much as they think they knew,
Yeah,
they should be starting their own firm.
that's right.
And they're not doing that. They want to be paid like an owner without the risk.
Yep.
Yeah.
And if they're
Don't we
really
all?
into it, they'll start their own firm and they'll do it and they'll be successful or not successful.
Yeah.
But
Or not. But that's where you really decide, I've had enough. I'm going to start my own gig.
Yeah, well, you do.
I think I figured it out better. And they're not going to let me do it here, so I've got to go somewhere else.
Yep.
Bump, bump.
Not everybody can do that, though. I mean,
No, that's another temperament,
it's
too.
a personality thing. It's where your background comes, whether you're confident in handling not only the operation of your firm, the experience, happy with the money side of it. So it's financial risk. You've got skin in the game, reputation. It's a hard thing to
There's a
handle.
lot of uncertainty
Yeah.
when you start out, and
You have to be comfortable with
you're
that.
the last person to get paid.
That's right. Everybody else gets paid before you,
And the lights, yep,
and
the last person to walk out.
and you have obligations to people that work for you, particularly when they got families and a range of things. It's quite stressful, or can be, particularly if things get tight. And it isn't all about the logic of not making profits either. Your relationships sometimes firms, which firms will say, well, we'll do the speak job because we need to keep these people employed, but we're actually biting into our own revenues and our own profits to do that. But it's more important to keep that continuity
Yeah.
than it is just to be mercenary
There's a
about it.
lot of moving pieces. It's not just about, I'm going to do this
It's
thing
emotional.
and people are going to come to me and pay me to do it.
No. Relationships and those things are really important. And you also got to know when you can walk away as well. Well, this job's
When to say no?
When to say no.
Well, early on, you can't.
No, well, you don't.
No.
You do everything.
You do everything.
And do it well, generally. And
Well
then
enough.
after a bit of experience, you say, well, that was basically a little bit difficult. You just change the parameters a bit.
No, it's early on. You wake up at 3 a.m. and you can't go back to sleep because you're already thinking about, you got to get that next job.
Working for yourself can be quite hard.
But if you do it early enough and
Yeah.
you stick with it.
Yeah. And you don't always make money every year either, You've got to reconcile that. Well, we spent the year, we broke even, and everybody's still
we
being
paid our
fed.
bills
We
and-
paid our bills, and we haven't gone broke. But we haven't made $100,000 or $500,000.
Right.
And then next year you make it. It ebbs and flows. It's a bit like farming.
Ooh, highs and lows?
Highs and
No, it
lows.
looks, it always looks attractive from the inside. Oh, run the business this way or do it differently. But
Yeah,
there's a lot of moving parts you don't see.
you do.
But if you don't take the risk, you'll never know. That's the other part
You
of
don't
it.
know what you don't know.
You should, at some point,
Yeah.
if you really have to do it, you have to do it.
Yeah. And sometimes you fail, and that's not always your problem either. It's not always your fault. Things can fail because there's suddenly an aberration in the market means that you're no longer viable.
Right.
That's it. And, that's just like getting a hurricane through on your farm and it's completely taken out your crops. That year's going to be a bad year.
You have to have the temperament to be able to ride through that.
Yep, you do. And
not alienate your customers.
Not
and
everybody's got that.
alienate your relationships. You got to kind of keep an even keel.
Yep.
There's no shortage of brilliant people that have not done well because of the other social skills of just managing people, managing relationships, managing expectations.
That's right. It's interesting to see what makes people that own businesses do what they do. It doesn't always work. I mean, when I was working before 2000s, that business blew up, personal relationship issues, had to restart, but,
Yep.
you know, that was fine. I had enough tool set about it to be able, I had enough tools in the way I worked to be able to make that happen. Because once you've worked for yourself for a period of time, it's very hard to work for somebody else.
Why do you reckon that is? Are you
It's
just a
control.
bit feral?
It's control. It's, well, I do it this way.
Well,
What are you doing that way for? And it got, your employer's quite in his rights to do it however they like, but yeah, you get unsettled.
no, you're domesticated, and then you get out
Yeah.
and you get a taste of a different way of doing things.
Yeah.
You have to accept stress because you know how everything, you know all the pieces, so you
That's
can't
right.
just guarantee yourself a paycheck.
No.
But if you get good at it and the customers keep coming back and you treat them well, I think you do get a bit feral. It's hard to go back and say, "Oh, Kerry, just fill out this stack of paperwork from HR, and this is your
No.
cubicle. And if you do anything outside of what we need you to do, be sure to ask permission first."
Yeah. Well, there's a freedom in working for yourself.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a freedom in the fact that I'm here at the moment is because I can just take some time off and go and do this type of stuff, which, and if I was
A little
part of a
different if you
bigger
had-
operation, I'd probably have a lot of difficulty doing that. I'd have to justify it to my boss. And often they measure that in terms of quantitative returns. Now, I mean, what we get out of this is quality.
Yeah. What does the business get out of it? It's
Yeah,
very measurable.
But often life isn't about quantitative, it's about qualitative. And that's often, in terms of the economic system, that's quite hard to value, actually.
I think in some ways when you choose that career, you're giving up your freedom. You have to do it. You have to choose. You can't
Yeah.
not choose your whole life,
That's right.
or you'll be trapped by having not gotten good at something and having not chosen.
Yeah.
But maybe you do want to deliberate a bit about what you're going to get out of what's the return on the investment of giving up your freedom.
Yeah, it depends on the family situation and a whole range of issues. Whether you got the drive and the passion to make that go and to carry it. Yeah.
So we might go back to the cottage and look at your old laptop, your old drafting set.
The instrument.
Walk us
laptop,
through what that.
the beam compasses
Yeah, what do all those pieces do?
do. Yeah.
All right,
Yeah, no problem.
I want to turn this off a bit now. Just I think I can do that. So what is this? I'm here with Kerry Thompson. Here, Kerry.
This is g'day. I think I've been talking to this before.
Okay,
Anyway,
this is your 1960s laptop.
Well, not quite, but nearly.
Wait a minute, what's it?
Analogous for it,
We've
yes.
already opened it. We should just.
Oh, okay, sorry.
What's that?
It's Dietzgen. Dietzgen? Not very good at German.
12.
Master Probe. It's a 1216p.
And there were little pins here that you put inside the case for the moment.
Yeah, they kept it
But
locked.
those. Oh, have I broken it?
No, you haven't. Just opens up. So
Oh, okay.
little-
Yeah, there was a pin here that pushed through, and it caught that. It caught that little loop.
and these are the pins.
So you just pulled them out.
Yeah, they need straightening.
All
but,
right.
But that's fine.
So this is who would have this?
Trust person, somebody doing drawings.
In the office, outside of the office?
In the office.
Okay, so
It's part of their tool set,
okay.
along with their pencil. So this would be precision way of building circles. So to go through the various pieces.
Wait. Because the one piece I want to get to first. What we go to is that. It's like, it looks like a ball marker for playing golf. Go ahead, pull it out. It's because the bottom of it surprised me. If you can get it up.
Get it out. Oh yeah, I've got it out.
Okay.
It's probably why it's still there, because it's quite hard to get out.
Yeah.
And there'll be 3 little of the pin in it.
Okay, so there's a little pin in the bottom of it.
And it presses
And there's a
into
little
your
tiny
center.
circle on top.
Yeah.
What is that for? Makes
Doing
no
this.
sense.
Yes, it does. Well, I'll show you how.
Okay.
If you're using a beam compass, and this is a beam compass, So rather than using that type of compass,
Right. It's a beam.
It's
It's
a
got
beam.
a long line, and you could actually make it longer.
make it quite a bit longer. So if you click those two together,
Right.
you get that length, which is kind of like a foot.
It's quite large if you had to.
Yeah.
I mean, if you want to strike a 3-foot arc.
That's right. So you run the real, there's your chiseled pencil head there, so the
Yeah.
chisel point.
And the other end's got quite a sharp little needle on it.
Yeah, it's just a little step, slightly stepped.
Yep. Now, why does that have a needle on it?
Well,
And what does it work with?
well, basically you can put it into a piece of paper and then you roll it.
Right.
Or you do this with it. So you put your pin in the paper, and that means you don't gouge a great big hole
When
in
you're
the
spinning
center
your
of
thing around.
the beam compass around.
That is awesome.
Okay.
That was a bit at the very beginning. I thought, oh, I know what most of these are. I didn't know what the ruling pen.
And you get adjustment there,
Very fine.
fine adjustment. And when
So
you're
that-
happy, you just lock it down.
That kept you from ripping a hole in your paper.
That basically, because if you're doing a lot of circles and so on,
You would move
multiple
that little dot around.
yeah, or multiple circles from the same point. So you could start from there. It would be pinned into the paper, and you can do one there, one there, one there, and you'd always go back to the same point, but it would actually protect the paper.
Got it.
So that's what that's about.
All right.
Okay.
What's the next key on your laptop, dude? How do you want to? You just want to go down? Okay.
Yeah, let's go
That's
into
the
this.
next one.
These will be just little bits and pieces, spare parts,
Lead?
spare needles.
Oh, needle. Okay.
Oh, we should be able to get that out.
Oh, wheels.
Yeah, just spare parts for the
Okay.
whole thing.
Yeah.
The interesting thing about this set is pretty well complete. I don't hook myself up.
Don't poke yourself. Oh, he's trying to get away.
And just
All right, spare parts.
spare parts.
And then the smaller one.
That's the pin which comes
Oh,
out of the
yeah,
side
that's
here,
right.
which I've got to fix
You got
up.
one on each side, and those go
Yeah.
in the sides and then keep the top closed.
This will be lead. And you'd put it on sandpaper and get the chisel point. So that would be that.
Now, you reckon you're missing a piece?
Yeah, the
What
pieces
do you
I'm
think that
missing
would be?
is the lead holder for this set of main compasses and dividers. So you pull that out, and the piece that's missing is a piece that would hold a lead or a needle.
Oh, it would be interchangeable. Gotcha.
Interchangeable. Okay. And there's also a handle which turns this into a rolling pen. So you can have multiple uses of it. So that's that there. So it's a set of nice compasses. They vary. No measures or anything on that. You just
No.
set it.
You
and go
measure it
from
to your
there.
paper and work from there.
Yeah. Mid-60s. Set of small dividers. You take measurements off there. Adjustable. Transferring dimensions around. Those are a small set of compasses. The lead would go in there, or a needle.
Right.
And this would be a set of rolling pens. Now, the rolling pen is this thing you use to do inking before rotring pens and technical pens came on the market.
Can you see this one? Okay, this one doesn't have it. I'll talk about a particular on the ruling pen here.
On the rolling
there's
pen.
something special on that one.
Yeah.
So this is a ruling pen that's a compass.
Yeah, with it all built in. So
this one would have ink,
it's not interchangeable.
lead,
and dividers.
and dividers.
And this is a set of normal type dividers if you're transferring stuff around.
Transferring dimensions or proportions.
Whatever you're doing, yeah. And we go there. And then you come to the rolling pen, which before the advent of technical drawing.
Yeah, I've never had to use a ruling pen. Ever.
So if you have a look at the end, you actually bring it into...
I don't know if it'll come into focus. Let me just try to turn that around. So you really can't see it, but there's little numbers on this pen.
Yeah.
And it's 0, 2, 4, 6, 8 with little dividing lines between it. But that was your
line weight?
Yeah. So if
So you could turn it and set it to a certain value.
there's a 0, and if you wanted to send it to the same position, that's now 2. It's now 4. 16 wider.
Yep.
That's now 6, I think. That's now an 8. And goes up again. So you can just open that up as you want to. You probably wouldn't go much further than that because the ink would fall out of it. So you dip it in your ink, or you could use an eyedropper to put the ink on.
And it's just
And you just roll.
capillary action is
Yep.
holding that in it. Did you have to start a line on something else to kind of get the ink going so
No.
it wouldn't blob out?
No, but you had to be careful the ink didn't go underneath your T-square or set square. So you often find that set squares had a little step under them.
Yeah, there's
That
a gap
actually-
between
yeah.
the edge of the square and the paper, or also a May line would have that, or a machine arm. It
Yeah.
has that gap.
Yeah, so you don't get capillary running the ink back in. It would be used to draw stuff mainly on linen, if I remember.
Could you write a letter with that?
No,
You wouldn't.
It's
You'd
a
use
line.
something else. It's just for making.
it's a rolling pen. You haven't got enough like that in it. You haven't got
Right.
enough flexibility in it. It's designed basically to have a rule, and you go along and you get yourself a consistent, even black ink line to do the job. And that would have been the main tool to ink things in.
What's that little scallop? Does that serve a purpose, or?
Yeah, so it springs.
Yeah.
So when they milled it,
Oh, otherwise you couldn't.
otherwise
it wouldn't spring out.
that's a spring.
Yeah, it's not solid like the other ones.
No.
They remove some material to.
So it's sprung, and you got yourself this is why it would go.
And that was your startup cost for becoming a draftsman.
Yep. And
How much you reckon it cost originally? Did you find that out?
No, it'll be something like $30 at the time.
So what
Maybe
do you reckon
16.
that's?
I'll be like spending $200, maybe $250.
Okay, there's your
I would
startup
say.
cost.
Yeah.
And your software was the old guy sitting next to you telling you how
That's
things
right.
work.
And you'd buy that probably for life.
Yeah. Well, there's
You
Not a
know, in
lot of
terms of your
pieces.
career.
it's very robust. I mean, all the pieces are made of metal and
It's all made in Germany, actually, this one.
yeah.
And they excelled in that. There was another make called Kern, which came out of Switzerland, which made really lovely stuff.
Hmm.
But all those guys have gone.
What do you reckon that tape was for?
Maybe to orientate it, so the guy using it or the lady using it would always have it that way, maybe. Not sure.
Yeah, if one arm shifts and the other doesn't. No, they both shift.
It's an indicator. I-
Right. I
I
used to
don't- I
do that
don't-
to my scales in the office so I could
Yeah.
tell which side was.
That's that type of thing, I think. Personalization.
There you go.
There you go.
There's that guy. Thank you very much.
My pleasure, Phil. Oh, it's cool.